In different years, different Canadian real estate markets perform really well. This year, every single real estate market performed really well from a sales perspective. We're going to break it down and talk about all that in the first Canadian real estate update of 2022. The definitive guide on how to manage your credit, product, penalty, price in that order. It's never been more important to get your mortgage right. All right, so welcome back to the first Canadian real estate update of 2022. We're going to go through basically 4 or 5 of the major Canadian cities today, and we're going to talk about the sales numbers. Of course, at a later date, we'll do a full Canadian real estate update where we go across the country like we normally do. But I wanted to get this out there because basically the headlines out of the major real estate boards were pretty much all the same from east to west and west to east this year. And it was that 2021 was a record real estate year. But before we get into the details and we talk about the numbers and we talk about what's happening and what the rest of 2022 is going to look like, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video. And don't forget about our race to 25,000 subscribers, where one lucky subscriber is going to win $5,000 just for subscribing to this channel. But in order to win, you have to be subscribed. So go ahead, click that subscribe button. It's free, it's easy, it's definitely worth it. And I'm really looking forward to very early this year giving away that $5,000. We had 2 lucky winners this week. We got $1,000 and $200 respectively. When we hit 20,000, we're on a fast pace to hit 25. And I'm really looking forward to giving that money away. So let's get into it without further ado. Let's talk about the Canadian real estate market and what is going on, because it was a record year for pretty much every real estate market across the country. We're going to talk about Vancouver, Toronto, Calgary in this video and give you kind of the highlights. And the reason, by the way, that we're going to go through and talk about those markets first is because those are the markets that have already put out their press releases and put out their stats packages for December of 2021. And they're basically the first to present the picture. So later on in the month, when the other boards catch up, we will do a full Canadian real estate update. But I wanted to go through and just share what's going on and talk about what's going on in different markets right now, because it was an incredible year. Let's jump into the headlines here. Start first with Toronto real estate posting housing records for both sales and average price. If you take a look at the number of sales this year in Toronto, 121,712, which is up 7.7% compared to the next previous highest year, which was 2016. And it also marked a 20% or a 28% increase over 2020 sales numbers. Now, when you look at what's happening with respect to prices there, we've seen prices increase by about 17.8%, up to almost $1.1 million. They're at $1,095,475 as an average price, which is pretty much up there. Now, one of the big news stories has been that the condo market in cities like Toronto and Calgary has been a little bit depressed over the last couple of years. That is starting to turn around, and we're starting to see those markets pick up quite substantially. New condo sales prices in Greater Toronto hit Q3 record prices. I suspect that Q4 they're going to go even higher. And basically what we're seeing here and what's happening, just to shed some light on this, is the reason why condo prices are starting to get more expensive is we're starting to see this scenario where single family homes are getting more and more out of reach. And at the same time, rents are starting to rise. And as renters start to realize that it's going to become more expensive to rent their properties and that it may be cheaper to actually buy a property and actually put some equity away on a monthly basis, people tend to flock toward the condo market. So we're going to see rising rents for sure, because we're seeing inflation, we're seeing overall higher housing costs, we're seeing potentially higher borrowing costs going into 2022 as interest rates start to rise. So we're going to see those rents go up. And as those rents go up, we're likely going to see condo market prices rise quite substantially as well. Now, before we get into the rest of the stats and everything, I do want to mention, by the way, that many of you, after we relaunched Great Secrets or the Secrets to Getting the Lowest Interest Rate course this week, asked, hey, where's the Homebuyer Bootcamp? I've been waiting to sign up for that. Well, here's the thing. The Homebuyer Bootcamp still exists. We've redone a few pieces of it. We've relaunched it. But in order to get access to it, you have to take the Rate Secrets course now. And the reason why is because if you are in the Homebuyer Bootcamp, if you're looking at buying a property, it's one thing to be educated on the home buying process, but you also need to be educated on the mortgage process and the rate process. Because quite honestly, in this type of market where you're paying over ask for houses and you're paying more for basically the ability to purchase houses and there isn't a ton of negotiation, negotiating room, the ability to actually save money is more likely on the mortgage than it is on the actual purchase of a home. So if you want to take the home buyers boot camp, which takes you through things like how to select your realtor, how to go through and get your home inspections and deal with the lawyer and everything basically from start to finish, you have to do the Rate Secrets course as well. So what you do is you go to ratesecrets.ca, you buy the Rate Secrets course, and at the bottom of the order form there is a checkbox that allows you to buy the Home Buyer Bootcamp. We package them together, and when we package them together, you save about 60% off the price of both courses. So it becomes really economical, but if you are going to be in that Home Buyer Bootcamp, I think it's necessary that you also have that Rate Secrets course so you can be fully informed, not just on the home buying process, but on the mortgage purchasing process and the rate shopping process as well. So we've packaged them together. If you want one, you can get just the Rate Secrets course. But if you want that Home Buyer Bootcamp, you have to have both. And again, we've added it in such a way that it discounts the price so much that it makes sense for you to basically purchase them as a bundle. So going forward, the only way to get the Home Buyer Bootcamp is to get ratesecrets.ca or the Secrets to Getting the Lowest Interest Rate course. So you can go to the link in the description below to find those. And I sincerely hope that you will allow us to join you and educate you on both the home buying process and the mortgage rate shopping process. So for those of you who asked, that's how you get back in that Home Buyer Bootcamp. Now, moving back into our conversation about real estate prices and the housing market, Toronto wasn't the only market that saw really huge numbers. Vancouver obviously saw massive numbers as well. Vancouver home sales break record despite tax on foreign buyers. By the way, taxes on foreign buyers probably aren't going to make a huge difference on the real estate market unless they're 20 to 30% of the purchasing values. Because when you look at a 1 or 2 or 3% tax on foreign buyers who want to buy property in a country, that 2 to 3% tax isn't going to deter them. It's just basically a way of collecting more revenues, but still not fixing the problem that is essentially the higher prices, which has very little to do, believe it or not, with foreign buyers. It has more to do with simply supply and demand within the country. Now, looking at the Vancouver home sales, they soared to a record in 2021, just shy of 44,000 homes traded hands, which is 42% higher than 2020, and almost 1,700 more sales than the previous record, which was in 2015. Now, Vancouver's market hit an all-time high. We waited all year. It crept closer and closer and closer and closer to that $1.2 million number. And at the end of the year, the benchmark price in Vancouver ended up at $1.23 million, which is absolutely insane. By the way, I don't know why Bloomberg added in here that was $969,000 US dollars, but in case you're interested, it's just under $1 million US dollars to buy a benchmark home in Vancouver. And that is 17% higher than it was in December of 2020. Now, Calgary's housing market had similar sort of numbers, and this is where it gets interesting because we've seen the Toronto and the Vancouver markets be in an absolute frenzy. That kind of happened in the Prairie provinces, but not really that much. This December and early January, it is like the Calgary and the Edmonton markets have collectively lost their minds. We're seeing tons of competing offers. We're seeing all sorts of lineups at houses to see them. In fact, our own neighbors sold their house recently. I literally had to kick people off of our driveway as they waited for the people in front of them who were viewing the property prior to them to vacate the house. I had to kick them off of our property because they were sitting in front of our house, in front of our driveway, blocking our way out. Absolutely ludicrous. I've never seen that before. By the way, that house next door to us sold for $130,000 more. Sorry, it was $160,000 more than it had in the previous 2 years. So it had sold 23 months prior for basically $160,000 less, which is absolutely absurd. Now, if we go ahead and we take a look at the Calgary housing market, we still ended up with record sales. For 2021, we ended up at 27,686 sales. That's 72% higher than last year and 44% higher than the 10-year average. The average home price in Calgary ended up $492,704. So typically at the beginning of the year, it was around $450,000. We're now seeing it up nearing that $500,000 mark for the first time. It's going to be really interesting to see where the Calgary market goes and to see if it catches up to Vancouver and Toronto over the course of this year. Now, there's one last thing I want to show you because I mentioned taxes earlier. I mentioned the foreign buyers tax, which obviously has very little effect on foreign buyers and the overall market. CMHC recently backed a report that calls for a surtax on $1 million plus homes. What they are doing is they have a Vancouver-based advocacy group called Generation Squeeze. that is backed by the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, and they are looking to put a 1% tax on houses over $1 million. They're suggesting this. Now, I'm going to go out there and on a limb as an economist and say you can't tax yourself out of a problem. Putting a 1% tax on $1 million property or $2 million property or a $3 million property isn't going to have an effect on the market. And they're saying, you know, this isn't a silver bullet, but what they're saying is that the Canadian real estate market needs a bunch of silver shotgun pellets. So a whole bunch of things acting on the market to try to depreciate it. And the reality of it here is introducing taxes is not going to do anything to decrease the value of the market. In fact, what it would do is it would put a run into the market prior to those taxes going into effect. So this $1 million plus home tax in Canada is a horrible idea. I mean, unless you look at it from the perspective of providing some funds for affordable housing on the bottom. But like they say, you can tax the top 1% of the wealthy people in the North America, and you could tax them at 100%, and you still aren't going to be able to tax yourself out of the deficit. So, you know, it's a really interesting concept. There's a lot of different people out there suggesting things for the market. The bottom line here is we need one of two things to happen. We either need demand to chill out in some way, shape, or form that we don't see coming. Maybe that's higher interest rates, but maybe it's something else. Or we need new houses to be built in Canada so that there are more places for people to live. And as immigrants come in, they have a place to live, a place to buy that doesn't put a significant amount of upward pressure on the market. And if you build up and you add that supply, that's where you're going to start to see the depreciation in the values of the houses, because the reality of it here is we just simply don't have enough housing. That has been proven, or we don't have enough of the type of housing that people want to live in. So we have to fix that problem. And that is a 2-3 year runway with respect to how long it would take to fix that problem. And it takes the municipal governments, the provincial governments, and the federal governments all getting out of their own way in order to make that happen, primarily with municipal and provincial governments getting rid of the red tape, and with the federal government supporting the efforts for affordable housing to be built so that there is more affordable housing to bring down the prices of houses across the board. So, you know, interesting things happening, interesting sales numbers, really, really interesting times for the Canadian real estate market. I suspect we're going to see another 6 to 8 months of hot markets unless we see something drastically change in the finances and the economy of the Canadian market. And at the end of the day, you know, you can expect that we're going to see a little bit more of a run up, especially in places like Calgary and Regina and Winnipeg and the far eastern provinces and eastern cities like St. John's and Moncton and so on and so forth. So it's going to be an interesting year for real estate. We're continuing to watch it. If you are getting into the market, again, we've got that home buyer boot camp. We're happy to help you find a realtor. We're happy to help you with your mortgage. You can go to mortgage360.ca to apply. And if you found this video useful, do me that favor, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Please hit that like button so more people like you can see this video, and we'll see you on the very next one. Cheers.